Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Om Puran. I'll be your host for today. Thank you, and we'll start the webinar now. The COVID-19 pandemic has moved us all into uncharted territory, and very much of it is quite unknown and uncertain. Organizations are very much relying more than ever on the cloud technologies and services. And this is in fact leading to increased cloud adoption. So the SharePoint platform is synonymous with a secure team of collaboration. And in this regard, we present to you our topic for today: reduce risk and increase efficiency with SharePoint cloud migration. This webinar is aimed at giving you insights on how to gather a holistic understanding of SharePoint environment, its benefits, and preparedness for your organization for modernization so that you can get most out of your Microsoft Office 365 investment. Now, let me start with a quick intro about Yes Technologies. Yes Technology is a global technology consulting services provider that is committed to helping customers align technology innovation with business strategy. It has been serving some of the prestigious firms across the US, UK, Middle East, and rest of the world. Solstice Middle East is a division of Yes Technologies in the Middle East and Africa. It is headquartered in Dubai, and we have been serving marquee customers across the region. Now, let me have a quick look at the profile of our speakers for today. We have with us today Mr. Sarath Sannadi, who is a technical architect and has 13 years of extensive experience in the IT industry. He has vast experience in architecting, designing, developing the Microsoft digital platform that covers the entire Office 365 and SharePoint. We also are pretty glad to have Mr. Sarath Vakulavaranam, who is heading the Microsoft delivery at Yes Technologies. So before I hand over the mic to our presenter, wanted to highlight few points. Today's webinar will be available on demand and after this live session. Due to pandemic, I guess most of us are connected from home and there might be some internet issues in attending. So don't worry, when you are disconnected, you can always reconnect using the same link. We are also taking questions and your inputs. If you have a question, feel free to ask it or put it for a speaker. And you can see the Ask a Question tab in your player. You can locate it at the top. So you can put your you can write down your questions in the box there. So without any further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Sarath Sannadi. Sarath, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining today's session. So as Om said, that without any further delay, we'll jump on to the actual topic. So today we will be covering on six topics, six items. First and foremost thing is why we need to go to SharePoint Online, and quick overview on migration process and permissions required for migration. Migration approach and the limitations with SharePoint Online, and a quick case study which was done by quick case study with a project which was done by Yash. So the first point is any client who is in SharePoint on premise ask why we need to move to SharePoint Online. So first and foremost thing is the infrastructure, where we have more issues maintaining the infrastructure. You have most of the clients do have three environments like development, stage, and production. So you need to have different licenses for each and every environment, and you also need to maintain those environments on timely basis. Like you need to update security features, update patches, so that it won't be attacked by outside environment. And you also need to have a dedicated admin team to maintain those. So this is mostly the bigger issue with medium and large enterprises, because there is a huge cost involved when maintaining the SharePoint infrastructure. So the second important topic is point is latest features. When you move to SharePoint Online, you get the latest features whenever it is released. But it is not the same case with SharePoint on-premise, because you need to wait for the next release. You may or may not get the features which is available in SharePoint Online. So latest features is also the important factor which we need to consider on why we need to move to SharePoint Online. So when you say latest features, it's like modern sites mainly, hub sites and communication sites, which was redesigned in SharePoint Online, and the kind of governance which we get in SharePoint Online. So that is the second point. Mobile experience is other third point, where by default SharePoint Online you can access all the SharePoint document sites, important links um, in mobile, and you can also find people, um, whoever you want to interact, and you can also browse your profiles, sites, whatever the sites you have bookmarked. All those can be accessed easily in mobile. And the tools, which is part of Microsoft 365, when you purchase a license with Microsoft 365, you get a set of tools and apps available which can be integrated with SharePoint Online, which are called modern collaboration tools, so that you won't get it in SharePoint on-premise, like Power Apps, Power Automate, which is called Flow earlier, and Azure integration, where if you want to integrate with third-party applications, or you want to build any customizations, complex customizations. So that won't be available. Azure is available, but when you say the Power Apps and Power Automate Teams integration, they are not available in online specifically. And most important consideration is, other one is the security of it. How secure your data is when you move to SharePoint Cloud. Usually, cloud premises is strictly maintained by Microsoft. Other third-party people who are not part of Microsoft is not allowed to access. And you have two-factor authentication, physical authentication in any of the data center, and you have a disaster recovery plan in process. And you have replica of data in at least 2 data centers. So security wise, your data is purely secure, and your data is can also be stored locally within your country if you're finding different compliance policies outside if you want to store. So data security is also being taken care by Microsoft, and the daily whatever the patches you are doing for on-premise environment, that is already done in data centers on timely fashion. So you don't need to worry about any malware attacks or ransomware attacks, which is recently happening. So that is already taken care. So any document uploads, it goes through a scanning. So any unrelated documents or scripted documents with virus will be scanned before uploading it to your SharePoint. So that is taken care by Microsoft. So scaling is other important factor. When you say scaling, when you have more data coming in over the period of time, you need to increase your servers in SharePoint on-premise. So how can we add? So we need to keep on adding those servers when you are dealing with SharePoint on-premise. And you also need to have a redundancy when something fails. You also need to have a backup plan and rollover plans, everything in place whenever doing your production release or something like that. Scaling is already by default taken care. Any fail, for example, if something failed, so you can easily retrieve. So every 14 days you have a backup available in data centers. So you can roll it back the previous 14 days, and you can also have a priority one ticket. You have a support team who will be handling it, the backups, and also any natural disaster happening within the data centers. So coming to the support specifically, SLA for the uptime of SharePoint Online is 1% less than 100%, like it is 99.9%. And you have health dashboards available within your tenant just to monitor what is the health of your SharePoint Online, and also Office 365 apps. And you have a scheduled maintenance releases available. So if you have any maintenance happening at your SharePoint Online or in your tenant, you'll upfront know what is happening, so that you can prepare your business users telling them, so this is coming up on this date. And you also have web and email support available, just in case if you want to reach out, you can also reach out on the portal, and also the email support is available. For developers, what is that? What is the advantage of moving to online? So one thing is, previously in on-premise, when you want to deal with SharePoint Online, you have REST API or jQuery third-party plugins available to access the information for CSM. And but here, if you want to collaborate with different apps, we have one unified API called Graph API, where you can access all the platforms in SharePoint Online, and also Office 365 apps like Teams, Power Apps, etc. Like Teams, Planner, YAML, all those apps. So developers have more flexibility now. They can do collaborate and build some of the new apps uh, to modernize the content. So for Automate, as I said earlier, Automate, you have a flow, which is a replacement. Now it is called Power Automate, but when you are dealing with SharePoint Designer workflows or Visual Studio workflows, when you want to take that business process automation into online, then we have flow. So coming to migration overview, we have 6-step process. First is we analyze the target environment and enforce some target environments, so that we know what to check and what is the data we have, how many users are there. So that is part of analysis. And coming to planning, so what are the strategies which we need to use for migration, and defining the costs, different tools, comparing different tools and costs, and preparing a migration plan. Uh, uh, and the third step, preparing the environments for migration, like cleaning up all the orphan users, orphan sites, um, testing target environment, moving a simple data there, just to make sure things are working right there. So on migration part, like once you prepare, once the 3 steps on top is done carefully, the migration is pretty simple. You can migrate using a tool, or you can do a manual migration based upon your data. Once you migrate, you validate the data from your side, from the admin side, like where our admin on a SharePoint SME go back and checks if everything is working, workflows are running, metadata is there, all the links are working. So just a kind of a smoke test, and if required, we can also do a detailed testing um, based upon the kind of data which we deal with. Training is when you want to give the available features available on SharePoint Online, as I said earlier, Power Apps and Power Automate, which may not be knowing for SharePoint on-premise users. So training plays an important role, telling them that these are the new features available. You have Teams integration with SharePoint Online. You also have you can also integrate for Microsoft Forms, Power BI. So those can be updated to business users so that they can use those tools whenever needed. So we'll cover more on the first 4 steps in the next slides, but this is a brief overview. So coming to considerations, so content and discovery is one of the major steps while doing the migration. This is the most important step, I would say, because we need to audit the old environment, what we have, analyze what suits our sites. Like for example, we have 2 sites in SharePoint Online, like classic and modern site. So whatever you have in SharePoint on-premise is classic site. So if you want to migrate as is, or you want to convert those into modern sites, so that kind of analysis you should take care. And how many pages you have within the each and every site, and what are the custom solutions, custom workflows, any customizations happen on the sites, like the UI changes, or UI custom UI master pages, and if there are any explicit permissions given on sites based upon the users, and what are the groups we have, And if there are any larger sites in SharePoint, for example, you have huge data in one site collection, and some site collections may have very less data there. So what you need to do is, when you have a larger site collection, just split those site collections into smaller ones, so that they can be easily handled in SharePoint Online. Because you have codes in SharePoint Online, you cannot. There's a limit of data available, like 1 TB. If it is more than 1 TB of data, you need to go back and split those. So, and cleaning up any of the unused sites which you don't want, or which is staying for longer, which has not been used, and any users who are not part of organization, because when you are moving users, you're also dealing with the licenses there. So just make sure that you don't move any of the orphan users or unused users there. Delete unwanted versions. If you have any major versions, you have major and minor versions in documents, I believe you can delete all the minor versions, because you don't really need minor versions when you're moving to SharePoint Online. And reorganize all the larger files. If you have folders, bigger folders where you have huge data, reorganize those just to make sure that you split the data into different folders or different libraries, or creating a document center, something like that. So just make sure that you split those data. And URL length limit is one we need to consider, because usually you have 256 character limits. If you have bigger URLs, just make sure that you cut down those. And any bookmarks you are given in the documents or referring to the older size, go back and thoroughly check those URLs, because that may break when you move to SharePoint Online. So those are the important you have more, but those are some of the major things which we need to consider on the content and discovery part. So the second step is planning. So do plan what methodology to use. For example, if you want to go in phases, phase by phase, you want to use agile or waterfall methodology. When is the production release happening? Um, um, what is the downtime you have? So do communicate to business users, like what is the downtime if you are taking down your SharePoint farm server, and list down all the write down all the custom solutions, so that you can plan accordingly which custom solution will be delivered on which phase, so that business users know this is coming up and this phase. So planning is most important thing. And also do plan for smaller chunks of data migration. Don't do a larger chunk at one shot. So that makes us easy to identify if there are any issues. And third point, actual migration, which most experts suggest that don't do as is migration. Many clients ask, can we lift and shift, migrate the data into SharePoint Online? But don't do that. Just analyze the environment which is there as part of on-premise and online. Um, uh, if you lift and shift, what happens is you may not know what are the new features available in SharePoint Online, which you may not use in near future. Uh, so just make sure that you use those features. For example, SharePoint design, of course, you can do it in a flow. So that kind of detail, just make sure that you don't really lift and shift that migration. And when you do migration, make sure all the users commit their changes in. Like, for example, if someone is editing the document, and if you are migrating, those kind of details won't come up when you move to SharePoint Online. The person should check in, and also workflow should be completed. So just this should be taken care of when you're doing actual migration. And tell users what are all migrating and what are all not migrating. Uh, give a detailed report to users. And whatever the service you have as part of SharePoint Online SharePoint on-premise cannot be migrated to SharePoint, because you need to redo all the services like user profile, term stores, all those. Term stores can be migrated, but user profile you need to reconfigure. Uh, and so depend on file sizes. For example, if you have bigger sizes of files, like 1 GB of one file, if you have 1 GB of a video file, that can be easily migrated, because it's a one file with bigger size. But if you have a smaller chunks, but you have huge data, it takes more time. So the speed of migration actually depends upon the kind of different size of data, and how big is the data and the size. So after doing actual migration, you should have the governance plan in place so that you can define who is site selection administrators uh, and also who will be measuring the metrics and defining the rules and process and what are the retention policies of the company. So some may have like 5 to 7 years. So you need to define all those. So we need to have a governance committee just to make sure that things are in place after migrating the data. And also define the technical structures like site structures and requirements and review cycles on the content policies, archiving and deleting of content. Like you need to define those policies like for archiving and deleting. And what are the authentication mechanisms if you want someone want to access SharePoint online data? What are the authentication mechanisms in place for third-party applications? So those are all comes under governance plan. Just make sure that you have that list in place after migration. And the last point on this consideration is feature comparison. So you need to compare features, what is there in on-premise and what is there in online, because some may not be available in online, but you have a kind of other app which is available to replace that. Um, so, so you need to define, for example, you can convert InfoPass forms to Power App forms and workflows to Power Automate. So those kind of comparison you need to have listed down so that you know what to be matched in SharePoint Online or be done in SharePoint Online. So do list out all the features and rebuild accordingly. Or you can also use some of them as is like InfoPass forms. You can still use it, but just make sure that you compare those. So coming to the migration, if you are doing a migration, some of the permissions which would require is farm administrator, obviously, because who have full access can easily migrate the content if you are using a tool. Site collection administrator, if you are if you have access, obviously site collection admin have full access to the data. Any of the service accounts which is mapped on a services, just make sure that you have all the details of the service account. If you want to if you are doing a manual migration, full control would be more than enough because you can do a copy paste of all the documents or any other credential. Just make sure that you have all the permissions available while doing a migration, because when you're running using a tool, what happens is it may stop because of the permission issue, and it may stop in the middle while running it. So just make sure that you have all the permission levels. So what are the approaches we have for migration? We have manual migration, API, fast track, hybrid, and third-party tools. We'll go in detail one by one. So manual migration is where you have something like copying, pasting from Explorer view to dragging and dropping to SharePoint Online. If you have a smaller data, copying and pasting is kind of a straightforward method. Um, uh, but the only challenge which we see here, like if you have a minimal data, that this works. But the only challenge is if you don't get the metadata of all those files, like created by or modified by, all those will be gone. Uh, but it's pretty straightforward method, um, copying or dragging and dropping of data into SharePoint Online. Um, Migration API is mostly for developers, where you place the content into Azure and you have a timer job running and picking that content from the Azure and then putting it into SharePoint Online. But it's mostly used by developers. So it is both copying files manually and migration API works when you have a smaller chunk of data. It really doesn't help if you have a huge chunk of data which you want to migrate. And hybrid migration is not actually a migration, but it's a kind of a technically called as linking between SharePoint on-premise and online, where you want to get both the features, like both advantages of both on-premise and online environments, and you want to have use all the collaboration tools. So then you really go with this method. So you have all the both the features, and when you are dealing with sensitive data, kind of a financial data, where you don't want to store it in cloud, but also want to use all the latest features, then you go with SharePoint Online, online and on-premise linking. So, uh, So it's not called, as I said, it's not called as a migration, but it's a kind of a model which financial customers mostly prefer, and users really don't know the changes happening, linking or accessing between two environments. So it's very easy. So fast track is other method which is available from Microsoft side and used when you are a new customer, where you want to have planning and planning in place. Microsoft will come and help you, assisting you for planning, development, and implementation. Uh, and also suggest you the software tools, give some software tools and admin console scripts um, for guidance, for any guidance on configuration tasks. So fast track tool is for the clients who have more than 500 licenses. And it will be available for a certain period of time if you are a new customer who is buying Microsoft 365 licenses. Third-party migration tools are, we have two tools, Migration Manager and a Mover tool. Migration Manager is usually, both the tools are from Microsoft. Migration Manager is only for moving the files from on-premise file system to online. And Mover is for online to online migration. Like if you have some data in Google Drive or OneDrive, some other or any other drives, Dropbox. So those are the ones. Those are the two methods. Tools are helpful for migrating data. So these are the available tools. But so third-party migration tool is most used for SharePoint Online migration. So some of these tools, ShareGate, Metlogix, and AvePoint are top three tools which are available in market. And most of these tools do the same thing, but some of the features, if I want to point out, it does migrate data from SharePoint on-premise to online. It can do all of those tools to bulk migration, um, schedule the jobs so that you can do it overnight. You can schedule a job, like for example, you can select a site collection and start migration. And overnight, it can be migrated to SharePoint on. It does pre-check analysis just to make sure that if there are any errors before migrating. So in the pre-check, you will get all the details of errors so that you can rectify before migrating, and it will generate a report. All the tools generate a report of those. And we have a quick launch to easy access the menu items. You can migrate SharePoint documents, document templates, files and folders, all those tools. Content types, um, desktop files. We can also move file shares from desktop or file shares to SharePoint Online. It also generate migration report. What happened, like in the migration? Is there any errors? Is there any failures happening? And we have support for all these tools, where we have a dedicated support team who will support 24/7 and help you on the issues. And you also have email support. So to compare on cost, AFPoint is a bit costly compared to other tools. So you need to select the kind of based upon your data and kind of a cost which you can afford for this tool. So some of the limitations for migrating to SharePoint Online, which we see here, is basically the custom solutions as for the developers specifically. So if you have any SharePoint custom solutions that cannot be really migrated to SharePoint Online, you need to rebuild those using SPFX web parts. Or if you have any UI customizations, you also need to build using SPFX extension. And you can only use TypeScript or React. So certain available languages, frameworks which is available in SharePoint Online. And no public facing sites. So public facing sites has been removed. If you are planning to use SharePoint for public facing, so just make sure that you don't have an option in that. And no custom domains. So custom domains are not part of SharePoint Online. So whatever the domain you get, like for example, .sharepoint.com with your company name, that is the only one you can use. And admins can no longer find out errors. If there are any errors while dealing with SharePoint Merit, and we found some, like what we see most in SharePoint on-premise is something went wrong. So usually what we do is we go back into the server and find out what is the error in the log. But that kind of flexibility you don't really see in SharePoint Online. You need to raise a service a ticket or support ticket and go back and check the issue with the Microsoft team. And you really don't have a full control on the whole farm. And backups, they do take backups, but you don't really have control there for backing up the data. And the cost of the um, SharePoint Online purely depends upon the kind of options you choose. So choose based upon the organization need. And if you have any index workflows, you cannot really migrate. And third-party solutions, if you bought some third-party solutions in SharePoint on-premise, you need to rebuy those or buy those in SharePoint Online, which is part of online licensing. So coming to the use case, um, this is a recent migration which we have done for a manufacturing client, where they have 2010 farm servers. They are finding it very hard to maintain those servers because 2010 have already lost the security upgrades. So it is very risky to maintain SharePoint farm servers in all the three environments. So what have client come up and asked us is to move that whole content into SharePoint Online. So we did migrate using ShareGate tool, and we have also modernized the SharePoint for mobile support with Response UI. And we gave a single platform so that all the applications will come and integrate. It is also integrated with SharePoint Online so that you have a single platform to access all the data. So users are very happy with this because they can access SharePoint Online from anywhere and with a zero maintenance admin cost. So that is it from my end. Thank you for listening. Over to you, Om.
Hey, thank you so much, Sarah. I'm sure the points and the things that were covered or touched upon by you would be certainly be pretty much beneficial for all our listeners. And I guess this is the time we should go ahead with the rest of the things which I installed for our session. We have a question and answer round right now. And let me also tell everyone that, as I was mentioning at the beginning, we have a Microsoft delivery head, Mr. Sarath Vakulavarnam. So he's also there. He along with Mr. Sarath Sannadi, both of them are going to take questions. Okay. Now I'll start with this. I would like to start with the first question. Let me read it out. Do we need to buy? Just a second. I quick one. I'm so sorry. So it's I'm sorry about my eyesight. Just a second. Okay. Now the first question is: we are planning for a migration. However, would like to know what are the challenges and how to mitigate them. So, team, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, Sharad, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, you just go ahead.
Yeah. So first thing, Om, is that as we were saying in the migration part, we need to analyze the existing environment. We cannot blindly say that we can move the whole content to SharePoint Online. So we need to analyze the environment, and we also need to include business on every step, just to make sure that they are happy at migrating this to SharePoint Online. And we also need to take care about the user adoption. Um, so how comfortable they are like moving to SharePoint Online, if they're okay with the data to be moved to SharePoint Online, uh, and we also need to find out is there any transition difficulty um, uh, for the users, uh, so that they can easily adopt it to SharePoint Online. So planning is, as I said, is important step. Uh, So, and upfront, we should project out all the challenges to the users and also the all the stakeholders.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much for answering that one. I move on to the next question. Again, this is on similar line. Is InfoPath and SharePoint Designer recommended for SharePoint Online?
So,
And a proceeding question is, can Power Platform completely replace this?
yeah, Power Platform will absolutely replace InfoPath. And InfoPath, the licensing is, I mean, the support is going to end in 2021 or 2022, I'm not sure, but it's for sure it is going to end in 2022. So any InfoPath should be migrated to the Power Apps just to replace the same as is functionality in SharePoint Online. Um, so I would suggest whenever you're planning for migration, do take we can migrate as is to InfoPath, but InfoPath cannot be converted to Power Apps. So we need to rebuild those applications whatever we have in InfoPath. Hope that answered.
Okay. Thanks, Sarath. Thanks for answering that. Um, Next question is, it says, it goes like this. Our organization has close to 10 terabyte of data in file servers and also on existing SharePoint on-prem. How can we manage the large data sets during the migration?
So yeah, as I said, first thing is we need to split the larger chunks into smaller ones, just to make sure that if something failed in between, for example, if you're dealing with 10 dB of data, you don't want to move the whole stuff at one shot. You need to split those into smaller chunks when you are dealing with file servers, especially. So just make sure that you split those into smaller chunks and don't migrate web applications at one shot. You do migrate if you have a larger site, do select the largest, split these sites into different subsites. Like you move, as I said, split those sites based upon data. So when migrating, migrate in a smaller manner, so that if there are any failures, you would be knowing it. Um, so so splitting into smaller chunks is the best approach I would suggest.
Well, thank you so much for answering that. I now move on to the next question. How can we ensure that our UI is intact after we migrate from on-prem to cloud? What special care we need to consider?
Yeah, until unless I believe if you don't customize master pages can be moved using the tools, but if you are choosing between classic and modern UI, so modern UI you need to again rework on those. If you want to have same look and feel on the modern UI, you need to rework with the SPFX extension. But if you're choosing the classic UI, for example, if your environment is 2013, 16, or 19, then you can move those master pages as is. But previously for 2010 and 2007, you need to redo it if you are dealing with those.
Thank you so much. I now move on to the next question, which says, how easy, I mean, it's a subsequent question on similar line. How easy is it to convert, uh, okay, how easy is it to convert a classic site to a modern site?
So there are two approaches here. So one thing is you can run a PowerShell script for client-side pages if you really don't want to migrate uh, whole site, but only the pages of the classic site to modern. So you need to run a PowerShell script. So once you are done, what you can do is we have PowerShell scripts available online where you can run those and convert all those pages to modern sites so that it will fit on the modern site. But if you want to really do a shift altogether to modern site, what you can do is we have a swap commands available in PowerShell where it do the swap from classic site to modern site. But it's pretty easy. It's not like too difficult to do that.
Okay, thank you so much. So I now move on to the next question. That says, okay, uh, How did you manage the confidential data migration, if applicable? If not migrated to the online, then what? The strategy to the client.
So if not migrate to online, that is the question.
Okay, let me read it out again. How do you manage the confidential data migration, if applicable? If not migrated to online, then what kind of a strategy do you suggest to your client?
So usually, if you are dealing with, I believe, if you're not migrated to online, you have security applicable at different levels in SharePoint on-premise. Um, Mostly at site level. You can also do a restriction on the URLs part while you have a secure certificates available, and you can also restrict using VPN. You can restrict using sites and content level. So you have different hierarchy levels available to deal with the content in SharePoint. So based upon the kind of strategy you want to follow, we can differentiate the content and make the permissions available at each level.
Okay, thank you so much. Next, others. I mean, we are getting a whole lot of questions from our audience, so maybe we won't be able to take all of these. So I'll just select a few. Um, how can we manage the orphaned users during migration while there are many data activities tagged to those users on-prem?
Yeah, so this comes as a part of, as I said earlier, pre-check content discovery. That is
Mhm.
the most important step, as I said, as part of migration. So we need to deal with those users before jumping into SharePoint Online. And when we want to move those users to SharePoint Online who are orphan users, they are part of licensing. So just make sure that you don't waste any money when you move to SharePoint Online, and you need to get rid of those users or replace those users with some other active user, so that that data won't be lost or that process won't be lost at the point of time. So there are many scripts available to replace uh, those users at, for example, at document levels or a workflow level. So just do replace with the existing user or define any service account for those users who are not part of organization anymore, so that you can mitigate those risks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for answering that. Next question is, what is the typical duration of the migration process for a 6T data?
So usually, what we consider as part as we are part of many migration things. So as part of uh, tool, if you want to consider is, I mean, as I said, that is the most approach we use. So it is 5 GB per hour, and usually we do 120 GB per day. So when you are dealing with the tool, it is like 120 gigs of data per day you migrate to SharePoint Online. So that is when you're dealing with it is multiply for 60 GB of data. So for simple scenario, it's like 5 GB per hour and 120 GB per day.
Okay. Thank you so much. Next question says like, we would like to reorganize the site structure. However, do not want the existing content to be disturbed. Now, is this achievable?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So while choosing the SharePoint site collections, um, the first thing which we need to do is, uh, I mean, that is part of again planning. It comes the site content structuring and site structuring. We need to go back and ask business, can we split those sites into different teams or different sites or subsites, or can we move into different site collections so that the data can be split and reorganized accordingly? For example, what happens is there are different teams which are not part of that site collection, but still dealing with that kind of data. So we want to move those teams into different site collections rather than having under non-used or non-related teams. So that can be done and using a tool, and you can also reorganize the structure before migrating. And if we have that structure in plan before migrating, we can easily handle those.
Okay, thank you so much. I know, I mean, there are so many questions which are flowing, and I'll just take last couple of questions. Okay. Next one, it goes by. How do we manage SharePoint Online list limitations during the migration?
Yeah, so SharePoint Online, so that is one of the most people think like, because we deal with larger lists in SharePoint on-premise. So usually we have 30 million limit. We have 30 million items which can be stored in SharePoint list items. So what you need to do upfront is that while migrating, after migrating, what you need to do is we need to index those columns, and create appropriate views or filters, so that you can view the larger list of data. So the only option which we have is filtering the data and indexing the data in SharePoint on it particularly. But the storage wise, you don't have any issues. You can store up to 30 million items in a list, and folders and subfolders can also be created of 30 million in document libraries too. So that wise, we don't have any limit on SharePoint Online specifically.
Thank you so much, Sarath. I'll just go ahead with one last question. This is the last one I'm taking. I know, I mean, there are so many questions which are unanswered. I assure you that we are going to reach back to you, get back to you with the answers, and then,
Sure.
or else we can also organize some for some question and answer call wherein you can get all your queries answered. So with this, I'm going to take the last question: how to integrate with LOB application, line of business applications from SharePoint Online, example Oracle.
So you have in SharePoint Online, you do have connectors available. Either you can do with Azure, or you can also do with Flow, and you also have third-party plugins available. So if you want to really pull data, the first best option is Azure, using the APIs or web services which you want to. And you can pull the data using the APIs into SharePoint Online. But you also have connectors, premium connectors available to connect using Logic Apps or Flow if it's simple data.
Thank you. So I guess we'll have to, because all good things ultimately they come to an end, and we are approaching the end of today's episode. And thank you, audience, for your participation. I'm glad that even if it is a one-sided communication going on initially, as it feels like that we being into a mode where we are giving a preach, or we are putting all I mean, explaining you the scene behind the SharePoint. I mean, why it is important and relevant. But with the question and the kind of interaction that has come, so it looks as if it's a interactive session going on. So with this, I would like to invite Sarath Baklavaram, head for Microsoft Service Delivery, to wind up the session and give the vote of thanks. Sarath, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Om. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sharath Vakula. I'm part of the Microsoft service line for Middle East, and my primary responsibility is to help our customers in decision making by providing the right solutions that are scalable and robust to meet their future needs. So firstly, I would like to thank all the audience who have taken out time and joined this webinar today and have been very patient listening to Sharath Sanari and how he has gone deep dive into the importance of migration and also the special considerations to be taken while planning as well as during the migration. And he also talked about the available tools and the best practices. So special thanks to Sharath Sanadi also for taking up this. So briefly talking about Yash, we are a Microsoft Gold partner for collaboration and content and also the cloud platform. And we have almost like a decade experience in managing SharePoint applications, right from building portals from the scratch to migrating from older versions to the latest on-prem as well as to the cloud. And also we have done large projects which are mainly integrated to third-party ERPs like SAP. And we have, during this period, right, we have built our own frameworks and tools that actually help the customers in delivering results very quickly and with great accuracy. And besides bringing the right mix of technical and business expertise to each of the projects or the engagement that we take care, we ensure that the long-term objectives of each client are met by taking a holistic approach to understand the business and their technical landscape, and then develop the most effective solution utilizing the best practices. I hope all the audience who have joined us today have gained good insights from this webinar, and hopefully they can use this information to take right decisions in their respective digital transformation journeys. So if you are planning to migrate your on-prem SharePoint to cloud or need any help in making a decision, then please do reach out to us, and we would be happy to help you in your digital journey. I would thank once again everyone for their valuable time. See you sometime again. Till then, stay safe. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarath. Thank you so much. And thanks, Sarath Sannadi. I'm sure that our audience would certainly derive meaningful direction and guidance from this session. And thank you, everyone, for taking time and attending this session. As Sarath pointed out, that if you have any queries or want to know how to get started with the SharePoint, you can always contact us. And one more thing, today's webinar would be available on demand. We are very soon gonna put it on a portal, and we'll be sharing with you in a couple of days. And thanks once again, and stay safe and maintain social distancing. And goodbye, and have a nice day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.